What is up, everybody, and welcome back to the Mid-Level Media channel, your hub for everything physical media entertainment. I am Ken, here today for a review of Scream Factory's latest release of House of Wax. Yeah, guys, I'm super excited to talk about this one with you guys. I just got it in the mail over the weekend. I'm a little late to the party on this one. I know it came out on July the 13th, but yeah, I'm excited to talk about this one today with you guys because it's one I've been anticipating since it was announced, I think back in April or May of this year. And yeah, Scream Factory hasn't exactly been on a roll this year as far as like their new horror titles and stuff. They did Event Horizon, I think, back in March. They did Prince of Darkness, They Live back in January. But they've been pretty much like dormant this year as far as like with like new good quality horror releases. So I'm excited that they're actually getting some stuff out. They did the Dead Zone as well, which I got in the mail also, and I'm probably going to be reviewing and talking about that one too. But before I get into talking about this release, guys, and just breaking it all down for you, the movie, the transfer, the audio, the packaging, special features, all that great stuff, I want to ask that if you are not yet a subscriber of the Mid-Level Media channel, what are you waiting for? Hit that subscribe button for more great physical media-based content. Also, be sure to like this video, guys. It really helps out the video, really helps out the channel, and I would greatly appreciate it. And also, comment down below your thoughts on House of Wax just as a movie. Are you planning on getting this release? Did you already get this release? What do you think of it? Leave all of that stuff in that comment section below. So yeah, let's get into talking about this incredible release by Scream Factory. And when this was announced, I was excited about it, but to be honest, if I hadn't watched this movie, because I bought the DVD of this, I think back in 2017 from like a Half Price Books for $1. Awesome slipcover on this DVD release as well. But yeah, if I hadn't watched this movie recently, I don't know if I would have been as excited for the Scream Factory release, because I actually saw this movie back in 2005 in the theaters, and I remember just thinking, okay, that was fine. It was okay, you know, mid-2000s slasher movie, modern slasher movie. And then I never really thought about the movie again until I saw it in the Half Price Books, and I bought it and I watched it again, and I actually grew a greater appreciation for this film, just for what it was and what it kind of contributed to the slasher genre in the mid-2000s. Because if you guys remember, like, the 2000s horror decade is not my favorite decade for the genre. I'm not a huge Saw fan. Hostel, there was a ton of remakes. To me, like, horror it wasn't dead, but it was definitely on life support during this era. I'm just not a big fan of it. I know a lot of people are, but me personally, I am not. So I appreciate this movie just for what it contributed to the slasher genre during this era. You know, we had the Wrong Turn franchise that was kind of thriving during the 2000s, but to me, like, this is a better version of that. It still kind of feels like this backwoods kind of almost like redneck hillbilly type slasher movie, but just with the town and the people that live in it and stuff like that. But it brings something a little bit different to the table. So like I said, this movie came out in 2005. It was directed by Jamie Collet-Serra, which, you know, I didn't really know. Like, I feel like I've heard of this name before, but I didn't really know what he did as filmography. It's actually kind of interesting. He directed The Shallows. He directed a couple of Liam Neeson movies, one of which was The Commuter. And he also directed the movie that just came out this past weekend, Jungle Cruise, starring The Rock and Emily Blunt. So I thought that was kind of interesting, the fact that this release just came out from Scream Factory and everybody's kind of talking about it in the physical media community. And the same director also directed a movie that is out in theaters and is, like, I think, #1 at the box office right now. So I did think that was kind of interesting. The movie was a $40 million budget, so that's actually very high for a horror movie, for a slasher film in this era. And it also grossed $70 million worldwide. So I don't know if this movie would have been considered a successful film back in the mid-2000s or not. I know that there was some money in marketing. You always have to kind of take that into consideration when you're deciding on whether or not a movie was a success. Even though it did make $70 million, it cost $40 million, you got to, like, throw in marketing and stuff like that. So I don't know if you would call this movie a success upon, like, the theatrical release, but it's definitely kind of grown more of a cult following since then. And I think it said it made like 40-something million on, like, VHS and DVD sales post this film's release as well. So the movie itself was produced by Joel Silver and Robert Zemeckis. So Robert Zemeckis, you know, of course, Back to the Future, Who Framed Roger Rabbit? I love Robert Zemeckis. I talk about him all the time. Super underrated director. He was involved in the producing of this movie. It was under Warner Brothers, Dark Castle, which is also affiliated with Warner Brothers, but Dark Castle was a production company that was affiliated with Silver Pictures, also Joel Silver as well. So this is also a remake of the 1953 Vincent Price film, which is a remake also of the Mystery of the Wax Museum from 1933. So I didn't know that was a remake of a remake. But yeah, apparently this is the third iteration of the House of Wax franchise or IP or whatever you want to call it. So like I said, this is a decent slasher movie from the mid 2000s. It holds up better for me than I think I realized back in the day. When I rewatched it on DVD, I just had such a fun time with it. It's got a really great cast. Like I said, it's got Alicia Cuthbert in it, who was just all the rage back in the mid 2000s between like Old School and The Girl Next Door. She was definitely on like every teenage boy and early adults like radar back then for sure. And then you got Chad Michael Murray, which was a heartthrob back there as well. And I don't remember the CW show that he was in, but you got Paris Hilton in this movie, which was her first acting gig, and I actually don't think she did that bad of a job in this movie. And then you got one of the brothers from Supernatural. I forget his name. I don't know if it's Jared Padalecki or whatever. You can correct me if I'm wrong. I'm not a Supernatural fan. I just know that one of the brothers from the Supernatural show was in this movie. So yeah, you got a couple of CW stars in this movie. You got Paris Hilton, who was a mega star back in the 2000s just for being rich and for having that reality show on TV. And it has a really nice like mid 2000s kind of grunge feel and aesthetic to it. You know, the backwoods towns and settings, like I said, the hillbilly stuff was all the rage in the 2000s era, like Between the Hills Have Eyes remakes and then the Wrong Turn franchise. And yeah, this definitely it feels like it's in that same kind of tone and universe as those movies, but it also does feel a little bit different. It does feel more of a throwback to the slasher genre of like the 80s and 90s. Than those other movies do. So I do appreciate it for that. The story itself is fine. I like the setup just with the two brothers, and when they're younger, they kind of show them as toddlers and how one's like really bad and one's good, and how they kind of grow up and how that bad brother kind of takes control of the other one. And the thing is that when they go into the town, you don't really know like who they are in relation to like the beginning. You start to figure that out as the story goes on. So that's actually kind of interesting how it develops. But yeah, as far as the story, it's fine. It's honestly pretty basic setup though. You know, they break down, they find this abandoned town with the two brothers living in it. And you know, we go from there. So there's a great soundtrack in this movie. It opens with the Deftones' Minerva, which like I absolutely love that song. So as soon as it starts, I'm like, yes, like I'm just completely into the movie. I think the soundtrack's great. Like I said, it has that like mid 2000s kind of grunge rock, new metal kind of sound and feel to it, which I appreciate because that's like the era that I grew up in. Like that was the music that I grew up with and really loved back then. So a little bit too long, I think. I think they could have cut definitely some scenes. There's a little bit too much like wandering around in the town before they actually like get to the point, getting into the actual meat of the story. So I think they could have definitely cut some stuff and really trimmed this down to maybe about the hour and 40-minute mark. It's about an hour and 52 minutes as it stands. So yeah, it had nice kills in this movie. I really enjoy all the kills in it. Some really nice makeup effects, like with the wax, like the scene where they take the guy and they kind of cover him in wax, and they walk in and they see him like sitting at the piano, and it's like his face, his like eyes are moving. That's a very eerie and creepy scene, just like visually, and then also just thinking about like that happening to you and you not being able to say anything. It's a very effective sequence. And then he's like peeling the wax off, and it's his skin that's coming off with it. Yeah, it's you can just see the tears running down his face. All of that stuff is like very effective. And then you have the Paris Hilton death, which they actually promoted in the promotional materials for this movie, like come watch Paris Hilton die. So they spoiled that for everybody before they even saw the movie. Her death scene really reminded me of the death sequence of Jason in Friday the 13th Part 4. And I wonder if they did that intentionally. They were trying to pay homage with that particular death scene. But yeah, she kind of gets impaled in the head, and she hits the ground with the stick, like propping her up, and then her head like slides down the pole. So it's almost like exactly the same kill with Jason like falling on that machete and just kind of sliding down it. So it's really interesting. They don't really go into that if they got inspiration from that, but I would be interested in finding out if they did. So yeah, it ends with a big set piece, like with the burning the wax museum and like everything melting, and it's a really cool set piece sequence, and you can kind of see like why this movie was budgeted so high at 40 million, like with that wax museum melting. Like you can see like where the money went in that sequence. It's a really effective, just like big budget feeling sequence with like the whole wax museum like melting around them as they're fighting the two slasher villains at the end of the movie. So I really appreciate it for that. It feels different for this genre. You don't usually see like big set piece like moments like that at the end of your slasher movies, and this one has it. So I do appreciate it for that. So at the end of the day, I think this is a solid slasher movie from the mid 2000s. It's not great. I feel like over time, like it might garner a little bit more appreciation. It definitely did for me, but at the end of the day, I'll give this a 3.5 out of a 5. All the acting's solid, the kills are solid. It does meander a little bit too much. The story's pretty basic, but I enjoy this movie for what it is. I think it's pretty good. So a 3.5 out of a 5 is my score for the actual film. Now let's get into the actual transfer of this movie. This is a new 2K scan of the intro positive. It's 1080p, high definition, 1:85:1 aspect ratio. So the last time I watched this movie was on DVD, so it's definitely a step up from the DVD version. And then before that was in the theaters, so I haven't even seen the Blu-ray of this one, even though I know it has some Blu-ray releases, a lot of like double packs, what I was seeing on Amazon lumped in with like some other horror movies of that era. So I did see one standalone Blu-ray for like 45 bucks. So obviously, like if you're going to get this on Blu-ray, getting this version is probably at this point the cheapest way to get it, unless you get it in one of those double packs. So yeah, I thought the transfer was really, really solid. This is a dull movie, just like color-wise, just like the color palette of this movie is very dull. So it's not really like the most like eye-popping as far as like visually and colors and stuff like that. But I thought that the transfer itself was really solid. It definitely really shines in like some of the wax burning sequences at the end with the fire and the house burning, and just the visual of the knife coming through the door and just kind of cutting those two heads in half and them coming apart. Like all of that, all of the wax in those sequences just look really glossy and just really shine and just look really crisp and clear with the transfer. So yeah, definitely the best that I've ever seen the movie. But again, the last time I seen it was on DVD. So I think it's a really good transfer though overall. As far as the audio, it's DTS HD Master Audio 5.1. So yeah, audio wise, I'm just listening to this on a soundbar. Like I said, I love the score in this movie. They actually have the composer on here talking about it as well. I think it's a great horror score, but also, you know, the soundtrack just kicks all kinds of ass as well. So yeah, I thought this sounded great just from my perspective, even though I don't have the 5.1 audio setup. So getting into the packaging itself, guys, really great packaging on this. Absolutely love the artwork on this one. It's actually been the wallpaper on my phone like ever since it was announced. So I love the artwork on this one. You have the wax museum in the background and everything. You have some of the wax figures and the killer with the knife at his face, I think is a really cool. The killer itself in this movie like is really creepy. The scene itself, I didn't talk about this in the review, of Paris Hilton in the tent, and you see that dark figure coming in, the lights come on. That's a really creepy scene. A really cool slasher villain in this, just visually. I thought it was a really cool design. So yeah, the packaging's great. You got disc art, you got reversible cover art, which is always appreciated from Scream Factory. I always love that touch that they bring to that and they put into all their releases. So yeah, getting into the special features, guys, we actually got some really awesome new special features, a lot of new interviews in this one. But the big one in this is the new interview with Paris Hilton. So the interview itself felt like very staged. It felt like somebody had just wrote out a script for her to talk about. Just the cadence of her voice and how she's delivering the message. Just felt very, very scripted, like way more scripted than usual. Just hearing her talk about this movie, it's just very matter of fact. She's just like moving through every single point, talking about what it was like to be on set in this film and working with the other actors and actresses, and how this was her first movie and stuff like that. It's very scripted and very staged. But I did enjoy it, and I actually think it's really cool that she was willing to come back, that Shout Factory actually got her to come back and film this, because it sounds just from her interview that she really has no shame in like her career in horror. She talked about her love for the genre. So she could have been just as easily as said, like, no, I want to forget about that part of my life. You know, I have no interest in coming back and talking about House of Wax. But just the fact that she was willing to come back when a lot of the other actors were not, obviously, because you don't see Alicia Cuthbert, Chad Michael Murray, the guy from Supernatural. Like, I don't know, like, how Shout Factory and Scream Factory like handles like how they reach out to people and who they reached out to. I imagine they reached out to everybody, though. Why wouldn't they? The fact that they got Paris Hilton to come back and the rest of them wouldn't, I just think is really cool. I think it's awesome how she came back. She's like in this really clean environment, and she has like makeup and stuff. It looks like she's in her bathroom filming this. She's just very like prim and proper and pristine, and she's talking about this 2005 slasher film that she was a part of. So I thought it was cool that she came back, but the interview itself isn't like the best because everything just feels so scripted and staged. But I did appreciate her coming back and doing it. And you get the interview from her boyfriend in the film. I don't remember the actor's name off the top of my head. But yeah, it's a really good interview with him, and I haven't really seen him in anything else. So I don't know if his acting career kind of died off after this movie, but yeah, I haven't really seen him in anything else other than this movie. Then you get interviews with the special effects supervisor, Jason Baird, which is really interesting. And you get the interview with the music composer, just talking about how he composed this and how he kind of set certain musical cues to certain scenes in the movie. So that was a really interesting interview as well. And then everything else on this release is on the DVD release of this movie. So all older special features. You get like the B-roll, bloopers from the video cast, and then on the set with Joel Silver, wax on, the design of House of Wax, the house built on wax, the visual effects of House of Wax. So everything else, alternate openings, gag reels, theatrical trailers, everything else has already been included in previous releases. But the new interviews are really solid, and it is probably about, I'd say, 20 to 30 minutes of additional special features for this release. So definitely appreciated to get those new special features as well. So at the end of the day, guys, this is a really solid release. I think it's going for, I think it went up on Amazon. I think it's like 35 bucks right now. But I got it for 27, so maybe wait a little bit. It might go down in price. But yeah, honestly, really solid release and a home run for Scream Factory, Shout Factory. I'm glad that they decided to do this one. So I appreciate everybody watching this video, guys, watching this review. If you have any comments on this movie, please feel free to comment down below. Also, like this video, subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. Turn on those bell notifications for all of those future videos, and we'll see you next time.